kick it off then. Awesome. And we are live on 30 Food Safety with Jill Stuber. How you doing, Jill?
I'm good. Thanks for having me, Patty.
Of course. How are things in Minnesota?
We are very unpredictable weather, which is very typical spring. So,
Yeah, the long
yeah,
winter.
it is, but that's okay. I know it's here and I know it's turning the corner
Love it. Great. Well, Jill, I would love to just start. How did you get into food safety?
into food safety. So, I got into food safety because as an undergrad, I did a work study program and the job available was in the food micro lab. So I
Oh,
was like,
wow.
great, I am going to jump in. And I knew nothing about like making agar and pouring plates and transferring cultures. But that was the first like introduction to food micro. And from there, I was
Oh,
hooked.
wow. And you enjoyed the experience and were like, I want more of this?
I did. And I don't know what it was exactly about it. Perhaps it was just mysterious and a little bit of curiosity because I hadn't had micro before.
Yeah.
Um, but I think even as I was setting up labs for that, some of the things I could see the applications related to food, and that was kind of exciting. And I grew up on a dairy farm, so I've always been in agriculture. So seeing
Oh,
another
wow.
angle of the food industry, I think it was just brand new for me.
Yeah, that's awesome. And so started at a dairy farm growing up, had that experience. Now you're at Catalyst Food Leaders. Would you mind giving us like a quick run through on kind of your career in food safety to where you are today?
Oh, sure. Let's see. Gosh, it seems so long ago. Let's see, before I finished my undergrad, I went to school at River Falls up in Wisconsin, and I had a roommate who lived near the cities. And when we would go to her parents' house, we always drove by corporate Land O'Lakes.
Hmm.
Being a girl from a farm, I was like, someday I want to work there. And then I found someone on campus whose mom worked at the analytical lab. And so I had called her and then I called her boss like every month for like 6 months until they called back and they're like, hey, we have a part time job for someone to make auger and like autoclave trash. And I was like, I'm in. So my job started really like front line, like doing some of the stuff behind the scenes. And the part that was really amazing about being at Land O'Lakes is it was right when their lab had received ISO certification. And the part
Okay.
that's significant about that is I grew up in ISO and quality management systems. It was part of the core of what I did. And so every place I went after that, I was always asking questions around, where do we have consistency? How do we run these through the system? How, like, all those questions. And so from there, one of the next things I did was I went to get plant experience. So I went back to Wisconsin to a small cheese place. That was great, but I knew I needed to know more. So I went back to grad
Hmm.
school.
Oh,
After
wow.
grad school, I also got to do some research at the university, which was really amazing with the extension service. And then I found Golden Plump. And it was almost this dream job because it was working on the live side and in the processing facilities, but also with the lab. So it was really exciting.
Oh,
And
wow.
from there, having that experience just took me to other places. So my career kind of went in, kind of followed these paths. I didn't have it mapped. But when I was at Golden Plump, I did have, this experience where I realized, I went back for another master's after my first one, and I did certifications like Six Sigma and Lean and right, all the things.
Yeah.
I still felt like I wasn't making enough progress or being influential enough.
Hmm.
And, after a situation came up, what I realized is the missing piece was being a better leader. And that's really then what kind of set the stage for what has now become Catalyst Food Leaders.
Wow. That's great. And I want to back up a little bit because it sounds like it's a thread that maybe has gone through with you. But at that small cheese plant, what were some of the things that made you feel like, oh, I don't have all the answers. I need to learn more? Was it, from
Mhm.
management? Was it things on the floor in the lab? Like what kind of led to that feeling?
I think it was this space. Once again, they didn't have an ISO system. And so it felt like things were just kind of like spaghetti thrown at the wall on how they would approach things.
Yeah.
And I didn't have experience in processing. So between this approach that was kind of this, it felt random, and then not having enough technical knowledge about the actual processing side, I think those two things made me think I needed additional technical skills and formal. Like
Yeah.
I'm a fan of like this formal education process. So that's what I did.
Yeah. And did you have like mentors along the way that you met that you felt like you could ask? Or at that time you were like, you weren't in the cities and maybe you were in a rural area where there wasn't as much access to that?
Mm-hmm. And those were the days before like, LinkedIn and Facebook and social media. So it
Yeah.
wasn't as easy to be able to connect with people. So I was fortunate I had a group of friends that were really pivotal in kind of my growing up at Land O'Lakes who had been in the industry. They were
Yeah.
often my sounding board. But I think along the way, one of the things that I've seen through my career is from growing up on a farm, we often had to just figure things out. We didn't call people to fix things, we fixed them ourselves. We had work, we figured out how to get it done. And so I love hearing stories from people who talk about all the mentors they've had. But I've kind of been on the other side of that, where I've really been in this space of how do I figure things out? And I'll collect information to learn more, but I
Mhm.
don't typically look for others to tell me like where I need to go or how I should try things. I really try to source that information and learn, and I guess look within to say, where do I need to go from here?
Yeah. And just try for yourself and learn and adapt as needed.
Yeah.
So thinking about that, what were over your career some of maybe the big challenges where you felt like, yeah, maybe just big challenges that you were like, all right, I'm going to figure it out.
Some of the big challenges. Well, leadership was the first one, probably, because my first
Yeah.
instinct was to get another degree, to get another certification, because I think like a lot of people in food, we think that we have to have all the answers and that
Mhm.
technical expertise will get us further. And that was really, I think, the first time where I was like, that's not helping me. That's not helping me be more valuable to the company. It's not really adding more to my knowledge base. The place
Yeah.
that I needed to be more intentional with was really how I was showing up. And just, I think part of that's like, I'm going to say maturity, really. I mean, I had
Yeah.
moments where I wasn't really the most mature professional. So maturing as a professional and as a human and kind of understanding how I was showing up, that's probably the area that was the most important shift for me.
Yeah. And how did that play out kind of in practice in the roles you were in? Was it people treated you differently? You got better outcomes on the business once you started focusing on the leadership as the area of input?
Yeah, it was huge. I go back to Golden Plump because I felt like that was the second growing up that I had in the industry. And even though I came in as a lab manager, I had been able to work in a lot of different areas. When my boss retired, he had been the director overseeing the three plants and their food safety quality team. The organization did a little bit of shuffling and put me in a seat that was essentially that same role. Um,
Mm.
and as I did that, once again, I was in this spot where people are looking to me for answers and what's next. And that's what I knew to do. So that's how I led. Like, this is the project we'll work on, or here's where we're going to go. And it wasn't command and control. I got other people involved, but not nearly as much as I could. It was through that I had moments where I had someone who, as I was learning leadership and asking for feedback, would help me in the smallest ways, where they would say, here's one thing that I need you to start doing. I'm like, what is that? And they're like, just respond to my email. And I was like,
Yeah.
I don't want to fill up your inbox. Really? That makes such a difference? They're like, yes, that is a game changer because you acknowledge that you receive it. And I was like, cool. What a good moment of understanding that my best intention was not how somebody needed to receive it.
Yeah.
So I had moments like that through my career as I was shifting in leadership that brought that forth. And it was just one of these things on how do I get out of the way of my team and what do they need from me versus me thinking I know what they need from me.
Yeah. Wow, that's great. And there's probably environments where the same person is like, why are you blowing up my inbox responding to everything?
Right. And so part of this spending time was learning more about each individual and like what things were those triggers for them and which ones did I need to step back from. And really it was like, how do I get out of their way? How do I get out of their way? Because I was the
Yeah.
one that was probably holding people back, even though that was never my intention. It was, nobody would have looked from the outside and said, gosh, Jill is such a blocker. But
Yeah.
I wasn't creating space for them to truly thrive the way that they could.
Wow. That's great. And I guess like in that time, were there any like big mistakes or regrets that you had like before Golden Plump or just throughout your career? Like anything that jumps out is,
Oh
yeah,
gosh.
putting you on
Oh,
the hot
there's
seat.
always these learning moments. Um, Gosh, we had some restructuring at one of my roles where the team really wasn't a fan of it. They understood that as the business shifted, that the roles that they were in needed to shift as well. And I look back and I think, gosh, how I could have communicated differently and better to help them feel more seen and heard during those changes,
Hmm.
because they just felt like they were on the receiving end of the business needs have changed, so your roles are changing. And we had somebody leave, and I think about how I could have been much more empathetic and much more proactive as a leader during that space, instead
Yeah.
of thinking, well, this is part of a business decision. Business decision, I think, is this code word for we want to put space between us and the people that are going to be on kind of the receiving end of a hard choice, instead
Yeah.
of really saying we're making a decision and we know it's affecting people. So
Hmm. Wow.
that was a big learning moment for me.
Yeah. That is like one of the hardest things is like letting people go. But it sounds like you're saying if you were to get that one back, maybe would have approached it with a little more empathy and a little more listening.
Yeah, and I was kind of playing into what the culture said. They're like, this is the business decision, this is what we're doing, these are the business needs. And there is obviously there's truth in that. We're all here to help a business succeed. But yet at the end of the day, there's still humans behind here that are making decisions about what the business needs are. And really owning that as a leader, I think, is important versus just deflecting to say it's a business decision.
Yeah. Okay, I feel like we've hinted around it a little bit, but I always like to ask, what would you say your specialty is in the food space?
Oh, well, it's these moments.
Yeah.
Helping people see these moments of where we're leading with technical expertise and knowledge, whether that's coming from a food safety quality background like I did, or coming through supply chain, or we've had people in sales and people in marketing. When we only lead with that technical expertise and that specialty, people are put on the back burner. And so when we think about culture, our tagline is culture doesn't change till leaders do. And there's a reason. There's a reason why it all starts with leaders. And that's whether we're leading ourselves or we're leading others. How do we help people really step into that and know that they
Yeah.
are whole and complete and valuable and worthy of being in this space?
Yeah. And I'm curious, like I've seen you lead workshops on culture, leadership, and it's amazing stuff. What do you think is unique for people who are trying to lead in food? Are there any unique challenges that make it different from leading in, a tech job or retail or anything else?
At the end of the day, the core principles of leadership are the same, right? Take care of people. So, from that
Yeah.
standpoint, there isn't anything special about being in food. However, I think the part that's different about being in food, especially certain areas, is we don't have pull systems quite often. We are pushing commodities, whether it's milk, meat, crops, those come into our systems. And so I think some of the complexities and constraints that we feel as a food industry are different than if I'm in automotive or healthcare. And
Yeah.
not only is it from the input side, but because we are also looking at, well, feeding the world And how do we get food out that's, healthy, nutritious, and at a cost that people will buy it at?
Yeah.
There's constraints with shelf life and transport and all these other things. So I think the complexity in what we do and how far our products go make the food industry unique in how we also have to think about leadership and culture.
Yeah. And I mean, so it sounds like there are unique challenges with the product where it affects everyone's life. It
Mhm.
can, it can't sit on a shelf forever. But then also it's like the food industry is not, um, you know, well funded compared to some other industries. It doesn't have an endless amount of money. The margins are maybe low. You have to produce a lot.
Mhm.
So it sounds like the unique pressures are kind of balancing this high impact thing with something that's, very low budget.
Yeah, and I think even in places where organizations have spent money on training with like good intention, the part that always is the hiccup is the follow up for reinforcing behaviors. The
Hmm.
forgetting curve is real. The change commitment curve is real. Like
Yeah.
those things erode ROI. And so when I think about the pace that the food industry wants to move, they often don't build in capacity for those type of things to happen. And so it's very easy for people to just do things the way that they did, convert back to the same behaviors. And so those I think are some of the bigger challenges that as we think about shifting culture with organizations, that we really invite the people that we work with to pause and consider like what are they willing to shift to be able to make change.
Hmm. And what do you see in the organizations you work with that do change? Like, what separates them from the people that just kind of revert back, versus the ones who like actually transform and implement this stuff?
Yeah, it comes down to individuals. Part
Yeah.
of it is teams, right? If team environments support it, I think it's fantastic. That the more people, it's a movement, right? The more you can have in the movement, the more likely the change will stick.
Yep.
So I think when we think about culture, it has to be more like encompassing with the organization and kind of pull everybody in. I say that, but I pause because when people are in spaces and they're like, gosh, I wish it would be different, or I'm really frustrated here. It's like we have our own personal like power when it comes to the leadership and how we show up. And you can make a difference with that.
Yeah.
And I love when clients see like, wow, when I shift, I notice people around me behave different as well.
Hmm.
And so encouraging people to really lean into what they can do versus always thinking, it's not going to work. Others won't move with me. Like
Yeah.
it takes one person to start the movement.
Yeah. It's contagious. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm curious, this just jumped to mind while you're talking about it, but do you find like the structure of a food company actually affects kind of like the receptivity to training, leadership, these sorts of things? Like, I'm just thinking like, we have clients who are fifth generation farmers, manufacturers under the same brand versus like, oh, a private equity is going to buy this company and flip it in 3 years, or a public company kind of feels the pressures. Do you see how like the actual structure of an organization kind of opens people up to those new opportunities?
It's kind of like the internal dynamics of the organization.
Yeah.
Um, Absolutely. I mean, there are certainly companies that their culture is all about we are down dirty, we are like stripped down, we don't invest. Like I
Yeah.
guess if that's their operating model, I think if people need to know that as they go into that company because if they're expecting it to be different, it won't be.
Yeah.
So when you do look at organizations, and we get this question a lot, like, how do I really understand the culture of an organization before I start working there? And that's where asking some of those questions about investment and long-term investment, not just quarter to quarter investment, and looking at how do they develop people? If it's
Yeah.
is it something that feels like they are approach it with integrity and in a way that aligns with what you're looking for? So there's so many layers to understand, but that core part of like what are they known for as their operating model is really powerful.
Yeah. No, that's great. And I guess looking back over some of the companies you've helped or just your career at large, do you have a Hall of Fame moment that you think back?
A Hall of Fame moment. Do you mean a Hall of Fame where I'm like,
Hall of
wow, that
Fame.
was
Yeah, exactly. Like, don't be humble here. Just something like you're really proud of. Yeah.
um probably when so Golden Plump, like I said, was kind of this like second growing up for me. And it was
Yeah.
this huge like personal professional transformation time. So when I started, when I was leading across the facilities, I would say I probably was modeling leadership like I thought it was supposed to be, which was business is business, personal is personal.
Hmm.
As I learned that it's not that at all. It's about wrapping your arms around people and helping them all succeed. That was like transformational for me. And so
Yeah.
when I ended up leaving there, when I had people on my team, like I was blown away at people, like the deep, thoughtful cards I got and the tears at my like going away party. I had
Wow.
not expected for that. I mean, I felt it.
Yeah.
I mean, like we had such a strong, amazing team. We still talk about it today in text on our text groups. Um, but it blew me away, like how much when you lean in as a leader that you can really, really be meaningful and impactful to each individual.
Yeah. Wow, that's so good. The tears, the cards, that's like definitely something that you hold on to when you move on. That's
Yeah.
great. And I guess like as you're kind of looking at the industry now, working with lots of different companies, do you have any hot takes in food safety? Like things that maybe other people wouldn't necessarily agree with?
Hmm. Well, things that others wouldn't agree with. I am a fan of like when we talk about quality systems, I think people, I mean, this is just on my mind today. Um, people, I would say the food industry has kind of somewhat bastardized what quality management systems are. And that
Mhm.
probably is controversial because GFSI is kind of founded in quality systems. And I say that because the original quality systems that Crosby, Duran, and all those gurus put together were really business systems. And so when I think about how we use them today, we try to be very surgical about they are for product quality and food safety. And I really like to challenge people to think about like when we say we want to be better business partners, like we have this quality system that was actually designed to be a business system. How do we use that to make progress in where we're at, not just in food safety, but organizationally as well?
So you're saying like apply these systems beyond just food safety product to the wider org.
Oh gosh, yeah. I mean, the original quality systems, like quality planning, was not about product realization. It was about business planning and how do we drive profit? How do we set up so that we can be efficient? How do we set up so that we deliver success and quality fit for use? So it was much bigger thinking about business versus just very narrow definition of product quality and food safety.
Yeah. How would you advise like someone in food safety quality to even start that conversation? I was going to say catalyze, I guess catalyst,
Yeah.
this is right up your alley, but I could see people being like, oh, I'm in food safety. We want to, talk about organizational change. And people are like, yeah, just go do food safety and get out of the way.
Mhm.
How do you even start that conversation?
Yeah, really it starts with linking. It's what companies are worried about is profitability. And if you have your own brands, like brand risk. So when
Hmm.
you start talking about those things and the impact that food safety has on all of those things, I mean, there are terms that people use every day and that hopefully they are leveraging, like rework. Like how much does it cost to do rework? That's all to the bottom line in efficiency. Like how much product do you
Yeah.
destroy? When we start talking about in terms of how much product value is going out the door or not going out the door, that usually gets people's attention in a different way.
Yeah. And do you find that you're able to tie some of the like more intangible stuff as well to that, like starting, talking about training and leadership and then tying that to the wider business objectives as well?
Yeah, absolutely. When you think about most people do have a growth plan, but you can't have a business grow if you don't have people growing. I mean,
Hmm.
it makes no sense. If I don't build capacity in my people, how do I build capacity within my organization? So
Yeah.
really thinking about how do you do that? Even if you put a new line in your facility, like if nobody knows how to run that line or put a new line in and we haven't built them to be able to manage another team, like that capacity will never be fully realized. And so the ROI on that will never come to the full fruition that it could.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow, no, that definitely makes sense. I think her name's Claire Hughes. She's the CEO at Stripe, and she talks about scaling people,
Mhm.
not just a business, not just a product, but the people themselves as the organization grows. That's great.
Yes, yes,
Is there
absolutely.
is there anything right now that keeps you up at night in food safety or food broadly?
I don't know if I would say it keeps me up. I've gotten pretty good at not being kept up as much at night. But
Yeah,
I think the things that still are always top of mind when I think about the challenges the food industry creates for itself by not prioritizing people.
hmm,
That is still always something that I'm thinking about. How do we approach that differently? How do we message around it differently? How do we get more attention around this developing capacity within people? And once again, not just technical skills, but the human skills that are important when it comes to attracting talent, retaining talent, keeping talent. Like those things, most people don't stay with the company because they're like, wow, I got to be an SQF practitioner. That's not
yeah,
usually what keeps people there. It's the feeling, the teamwork, the we matter. So how do we help the industry once again just rethink where that falls in line of priority when it comes to budgeting?
yeah. That's great. And for you, like, I guess as you're thinking about the industry, like, how do you do you think we're going the right direction? Like, I think we see at conferences, there's a lot of maybe doom and gloom of like, hey, we haven't actually improved much as far as stopping recalls and things like
Mhm.
that. Do you see there's more openness on mobilizing people and caring about people as it relates to food?
Well, I'm glad to see in the past couple of years there's more conversations. When you go to some of the big conferences coming up, there is more related to leadership. So I'm thrilled to hear people are seeing that it's not just about validating your CCPs better or your preventive controls. That
Yeah,
when we think about success, that it has to have the human element. The part that is hardest for any human to do is to do the sustained behavior. And that's why at Catalyst we work off this method of spark, shift, sustain. You can't drive culture and behavior change without all three of those. So
yeah,
even this week, you were part of our summit this week, which is fantastic. I love that people came and they're like, oh, it was so energizing and inspiring. But we were also really clear that is only spark. And I
yep.
think we have the same thing at other summits or other conferences. Spark is good, but we need to take that back and we need to do the shift and sustain part as well.
Yeah. And where can people go to learn about these things? Like, where did you go throughout your career? You said maybe um, like the master's degree didn't necessarily solve all your problems. Like, where did you learn? And especially when
Yeah.
you said you didn't really always have this huge network of mentors.
Yeah, and that was two masters, right?
Yeah.
The second one was actually a quality management master's, which that is the one that cued me in because there was one class that was human behavior in relation to quality systems. That was the one that I think sparked this entire journey that then helped me notice things along the way. Just
Hmm.
took me too long to learn all those, or it seems. Um, but I think when we think about where you go to learn these things, part of what I ran into is there wasn't anything out there in the industry for that.
Yeah.
when we would have companies come in and do leadership training, or even our Six Sigma, which was technical. It was people from healthcare and automotive and places outside food. And once again, the pillars of leadership are not different,
Yeah.
but having people who are relatable and understand this food industry and practical and help apply, that's the part that I had wished I had. So that's why Tia and I started Catalyst Food Leaders, because we saw this gap in being able to have something that was relatable so that people were
Yeah.
more likely to do these practices and practice them and learn.
Yeah. No, that's great. And I guess if you could give one piece of advice to like the next generation of food safety leaders, what would it be?
Lead yourself well, then the rest will follow.
That's great. That's great. And then I have two more questions as we're wrapping up here. If you could see anyone get interviewed on 30 food safety, who would you like to see and why?
Oh gosh, Patty, I saw that on the list and my brain still is like, who would that be? You know, so I can't name just one person, but what I think
Yeah.
about are there's so many voices that are just primed to be elevated up, especially these newer leaders. So Jade Jordani was on in our summit this week. Like, she's a fantastic voice and advocate and leader. Brianna Lorenzo is amazing in her own right. I always laugh because I forget that Tia is kind of in that millennial generation and
Yeah.
helping shape the next leaders. And so there's so many different people that I think, gosh, they have so many great stories to tell, and they haven't been shared as much to help inspire that next set of leaders coming in.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, we'll have to track them down then.
I'll help you.
And then, well, yeah, would love it. And then last thing, I just have to ask, how do you balance, because you got certified as a yoga instructor,
Mhm.
how do you balance pursuing things outside of the food space with some of those, other hobbies?
I'm a big believer that there are just seasons in life. And
Yeah,
so there are seasons where I can lean into yoga, meditation, hiking, my family, books, all the things that I enjoy more than other times. And so I just try to be very mindful of listening to what I need in the moment. So whether it's a season or a pause, what do I need in this moment? And then how do I make that happen?
yeah, that's great. Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Jill, for for coming on 30 Food Safety. I'll make sure everyone can know that they can reach out to you for Catalyst Food Leaders to have these conversations.
Oh, well, Patty, thank you so much for having me. I always enjoy our conversations.
I know it's great. I'm sad we only got 30 minutes.
We'll have to do more later.
Yeah, exactly. Awesome. Thanks, Joe.
Thank you.